A girl got lost and entered a dark cabin. What was hidden inside changes everything. Jennifer Mitchell was desperately searching for her daughter when the teachers announced that one of the students had separated from the group during the school trip to the Great Smoky Mountains. Her daughter Emily, 13 years old, had always been an obedient and responsible girl. She would never stray from the group on her own. It was during the storm that everything changed. Emily was photographing the bromeliads with her cell phone when she heard the first thunder echoing among the mountains. When she looked up to find the teacher, Rachel, she realized she was completely alone. Panic gripped her chest as she screamed for her classmates, but only the echo of her own voice returned among the trees of the rainforest. The first heavy raindrops began to fall when Emily decided to run for shelter. Her turquoise blue t-shirt was already soaked, and her sneakers made wet noises against the leaf-covered ground. The brown leather backpack she had received from her grandmother weighed on her shoulders as she ran desperately among the giant trunks of the ancient trees. That's when she spotted the wooden cabin wedged between two large moss-covered rocks. The rustic structure seemed forgotten by time, with its planks darkened by moisture and the roof covered in lichen. The slightly ajar door let out a golden beam of light that contrasted with the growing darkness of the forest. Emily hesitated for a moment, remembering her mother's warnings about not entering unknown places. But another, louder clap of thunder made her run toward the door, pushing it open completely and entering the space that would change her life forever. The inside of the cabin was dusty, but surprisingly tidy. A solid wood table occupied the center of the single room, surrounded by two simple chairs. On the walls, rustic shelves held empty glass jars and some old books with worn covers. The smell of old wood and dampness filled the air, mixed with a floral scent she couldn't identify. As she dried herself with the towel she found hanging on a hook behind the door, Emily noticed something strange. On the table was a white porcelain cup with remains of still warm tea. Someone had been there recently, very recently. Her heart raced again, this time not from the rush, but from the fear of not being alone. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The girl was about to leave when she stumbled on a loose floorboard near the extinguished fireplace. The hollow sound her foot made when stepping on the wood caught her attention. Kneeling down, she noticed that the board moved easily, as if it had been moved many times before. With growing curiosity, Emily lifted the wood and discovered a hollowed-out space in the ground. Inside the hiding spot was a rusty metal box, about the size of a shoebox. Her hands trembled as she carefully removed it from the hole. The lock had been broken long ago and the lid opened easily when she touched it. What she saw inside made her world stop completely. Photographs, dozens of them, in black and white and color, showing a young woman with blonde hair exactly like hers. But it wasn't just the physical resemblance that shocked her. It was the smile, the shape of the eyes, even the small birthmark at the corner of the mouth that Emily always tried to hide with makeup. It was like looking at herself 20 years older. Her hands trembled as she picked up the first photograph. The woman was holding a baby with light hair, and both seemed radiant with happiness. On the back, a delicate handwriting said, "Emily, 8 months, our first spring together, May 2010. Emily dropped the photo as if it had burned her hands. She was born in September 2009. The math didn't add up with anything she had ever known about herself. With her heart pounding in her chest, she continued examining the contents of the box. There was a yellowed birth certificate, but the name listed wasn't Emily Mitchell. The document said, Emily Harrison, daughter of Elizabeth Harrison, and father not declared. The birth date was correct, but the hospital was different. According to this paper, she was born at St. Luke's Hospital in Asheville, not at Greenville Municipal Hospital, as she had always believed. Among the papers were also handwritten letters, all addressed to "My dear Emily." The first lines of one of them made her legs go weak. "My beloved daughter, today marks 1 year since I had to leave you with a temporary family. My heart bleeds every day, but I know it was the right decision for your well-being while I recover." Emily had to stop reading. The words danced before her eyes, blurred by tears. Temporary family. She had always been the only child of Jennifer and David Mitchell. There had never been any mention of adoption or any temporary arrangement. Her parents had always told her she was the miracle that came after years of trying to get pregnant. The rain continued drumming on the cabin roof as she read letter after letter. The woman who signed as Elizabeth described a daily struggle against an unspecified illness, working multiple jobs to support a daughter alone, and constant pressure from her own family to do what's best for the child. One particular letter, dated March 2011, revealed details that made Emily cry in uncontrollable sobs. "Dear daughter, the doctors have finally discharged me. I'm working as a teacher now and have a small house, but it's clean and cozy. I come to Greenville every day, hoping for a chance to see you, even if from afar. The Mitchell family seems to love you very much, and that gives me peace, but also a pain I cannot describe." The girl had to stop reading when she realized she could no longer breathe properly. Everything she knew about herself, about her family, about her history, was collapsing like a house of cards. David and Jennifer Mitchell were not her biological parents. They were her adoptive parents. But why had they never told her the truth? When she finally managed to calm down enough to continue investigating the box, she found something that made her sob again. A small blue teddy bear, exactly like the one that had slept in her bed for as long as she could remember. Jennifer had always said the bear was her first toy, a gift she had chosen herself when Emily was a baby, but there was another identical bear, kept by someone who clearly had a special meaning for it. At the bottom of the box, beneath all the letters and photographs, was a flower-covered notebook. Emily immediately recognized the type of journal her English teacher always encouraged students to keep, a personal diary. Her hands trembled as she opened the first page and saw the same delicate handwriting from the letters. January 2010. Emily is 4 months old and is the most beautiful child in the world. I work at Mrs. Dorothy's market in the morning and at Mr. George's bakery in the afternoon. I'm managing to pay the rent, but the medical bills are suffocating me. Yesterday I fainted at work again. I need to accept that I can't take care of her alone right now. The following pages described a downward spiral of health problems, financial difficulties, and family pressure. Elizabeth Harrison was very young. Apparently she had gotten pregnant in her late teens, and her family constantly pressured her to give up her daughter for adoption. The child's father had disappeared as soon as he found out about the pregnancy, leaving her completely alone. March 2010. I met a couple today, Jennifer and David Mitchell. They seemed like good people. They said they could take care of Emily temporarily while I recover. Jennifer cried when she held my daughter for the first time. She said she had been trying to get pregnant for 8 years. Maybe this is the perfect solution. They care for her with love while I get treatment, and then we can be a family again. Emily felt a stab in her chest reading those words. Jennifer had indeed tried to get pregnant for years that she knew. Her parents had always been very open about the difficulties they faced having children, but they never mentioned that the solution came in the form of a desperate biological mother who needed temporary help. The diary entries became increasingly painful to read. Elizabeth described the first visits to the Mitchells' home, how Emily seemed to be adapting well, how Jennifer treated her with maternal affection. But she also described the growing reluctance of the couple to allow extended visits, the excuses that began to arise when she wanted to take her daughter to spend a weekend with her. July 2010. I tried to pick up Emily today to take her to the park, as we had agreed. Jennifer said she had a cold and couldn't go out, but I saw her through the window playing in the yard, perfectly healthy. I'm starting to worry. David avoids my gaze when we talk. Something has changed. September 2010. Emily's first birthday today. Jennifer didn't let me see her. She said she's confused with all the back and forth, that it would be better to take a break from visits. My heart is broken. This wasn't our agreement. December 2010. I received a court notification today. The Mitchells are seeking permanent custody of Emily. They say she's settled in their family and that changes would be harmful to her development. I don't have money to hire a lawyer. I don't know what to do. Emily had to stop reading. The rain had eased, but she no longer noticed what was happening around her. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion, anger, and sadness. Jennifer and David, the parents she had always loved and respected, had essentially stolen her from her biological mother. How was it possible that a temporary situation had turned into a permanent adoption without the biological mother's consent? But then she remembered how Jennifer always got nervous when the topic of family came up in casual conversations. How David changed the subject when she asked about distant relatives. How both avoided talking about her early years, always saying that babies are all the same when she asked to see old photos. The sound of a branch breaking outside the cabin made her jump in fright. Emily quickly put some of the letters and photographs in her backpack and returned the box to its hiding place, repositioning the loose board. Her instinct told her she needed to get out of there before someone showed up, but she also knew she would return. She needed to read the rest of the diary, find out how the story ended. When she left the cabin, the storm was passing, and she could hear distant voices shouting her name. The search team had found her. Emily ran towards the voices, but her mind was completely focused on what she had just discovered. How would she be able to look at Jennifer and David with the same eyes after what she had just learned? The reunion with her adoptive mother was emotional and full of tears, but Emily felt as if she were playing a role. Jennifer hugged her desperately, repeating that she had been scared to death of losing her. The word losing her echoed in the girl's mind with a completely new meaning. During the ride home in the school car, Emily remained silent while Jennifer asked 1,000 questions about where she had taken shelter, if she was hurt, if she had talked to any strangers. With each question she felt like screaming, "Why did you never tell me I was adopted? Why did you lie to me my whole life?" But instead, she just replied that she had sheltered under a large tree and waited for the rain to pass. The lie came out naturally, as if she were protecting a precious secret, and perhaps she was. Those letters and photographs were the only connection she had to her true story, and by instinct she knew she needed to protect them. That night, during dinner, Emily watched David and Jennifer with completely different eyes. David Mitchell was a middle-aged man, a mechanic by profession who had always been affectionate and present in her life. Jennifer worked as a secretary at a school and had always been a dedicated and loving mother. But now she saw tension where she once saw love, nervousness where she once saw care. "You were very quiet today, daughter," observed David, helping himself to more rice. "Are you still scared from getting lost?" "A little," lied Emily, pushing the beans around on her plate without being able to eat. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Jennifer immediately looked up from her plate, and Emily noticed how her adoptive mother seemed to tense up at the question. "Of course, daughter. You can ask anything you want." "Did you and Mom always want to have biological children?" The fork slipped from Jennifer's hand, making a metallic noise against the porcelain plate. David cleared his throat before answering, but Emily noticed the quick glance he exchanged with his wife. "Why that question, Emily? You are our daughter, biological or not. It doesn't make a difference." The answer confirmed what she already knew, but hearing David indirectly admit that she wasn't their biological daughter was like being punched in the stomach. He had just confessed, without realizing it, that she was right about everything. "So I am adopted?" she asked directly, watching both of their reactions. The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer began to cry softly, covering her face with her hands. David got up from the table and walked to the window, running his hands through his hair in a gesture Emily recognized as his sign of extreme stress. "Emily," David finally said, without turning around, "there are things that are complicated to explain. You have always been our daughter. Since you arrived here, you have always been ours." "But I had a biological mother," insisted Emily, feeling tears burning her eyes. "What happened to her?" Jennifer sobbed louder and ran to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. David finally turned around, and Emily saw that he was crying too. "Daughter, your mother, your biological mother couldn't take care of you. She was very sick, very young. She asked us to take care of you." "Temporarily," Emily said, surprising herself with the firmness in her own voice. "She asked for me to be taken care of temporarily, not forever." David seemed to have received an electric shock. His expression changed completely, going from sadness to something that seemed almost like fear. "How do you know that? Who told you that?" Emily realized she had revealed too much. She couldn't tell about the cabin, about the letters, about everything she had discovered. Not yet. She needed more information first. No one told me anything. I just feel like you're hiding something from me. And today, when I got lost in the forest, I started thinking about family, about where I came from. David sat back down at the table, seeming to have aged 10 years in a matter of minutes. Emily, you need to understand. Your biological mother, Elizabeth, she was really very sick when you were a baby. She came to us asking for help. At first it was supposed to be temporary, yes, but when she got better, you were already so settled with us, so happy, and we already loved you as if you were our biological daughter. And she agreed to this? David's silence was too eloquent. Emily had her answer without him needing to say a word. She didn't agree, did she? The girl pressed. You kept me against her will. It wasn't like that, Emily. It wasn't like that. David exploded, but immediately composed himself. It was complicated. There were legal issues, questions about what would be best for you. Elizabeth was very young, she had no financial stability. But she was my mother, Emily said, and the words came out laden with a pain she hadn't expected to feel. She was my mother, and you took me from her. We loved you, Emily. From the first day we loved you as our daughter. Jennifer stayed up nights taking care of you when you had a fever. I taught you how to walk, how to ride a bike. We are your family. But what about her? What about Elizabeth? What happened to her? David seemed to struggle with the words, as if each one was a heavy stone. She agreed to the adoption in the end, signed the papers. Emily knew he was lying, or at least not telling the whole truth. From the letters she had read, Elizabeth had never agreed to anything. She had fought as far as she could before being defeated by the legal system and a lack of resources. That night, Emily stayed up late, staring at the ceiling of her room and thinking about everything she had discovered. The blue teddy bear was in her arms, but now she knew there was another one just like it, kept by someone who also loved her, someone who had been forced to give her up. In the following days, Emily began to observe her adoptive parents with new eyes. She noticed how Jennifer watched her with an anxious look when she left the room, how David asked casual questions about her school field trip, trying to find out if she had talked to anyone or seen anything strange in the forest. During breakfast on Thursday, while Jennifer was making her school sandwich, Emily decided to run a test. Mom, do you know anyone named Elizabeth? The knife slipped from Jennifer's hand, lightly cutting her finger. A drop of blood fell onto the cutting board, and Emily saw how her adoptive mother instantly turned pale. Why do you ask, honey? One of my classmates is named Elizabeth. She said she knows an Elizabeth Harrison who lives in Asheville. I thought it was a pretty name. Jennifer was visibly trembling now, pretending to focus on cleaning the cut on her finger. No, I don't know anyone by that name. Another lie. Emily was absolutely certain now. Jennifer not only knew Elizabeth Harrison, but the name clearly disturbed her deeply. That weekend, Emily told her parents she was going to study at her friend Sarah's house, but instead, she took the bus to the Great Smoky Mountains. She had memorized the way to the cabin and needed to go back there. She needed to read the rest of the diary to discover the end of the story. The day was sunny, very different from the storm that had led her to the cabin the first time. The forest looked completely different under the golden light filtering through the tree leaves. Emily found the cabin easily, and this time she noticed details she had missed during the rush of the storm. There was a small side garden with well-kept medicinal herbs. The wood of the cabin, although it looked old, was in good condition. The windows had simple but clean curtains. Someone clearly took care of that place regularly. When she entered the cabin, Emily noticed that there were new things. The teacup was no longer on the table, but had been washed and put away on a shelf. There were fresh flowers in a small vase by the window, and on the table, as if someone knew she would return, was a white envelope with her name written in the handwriting she already recognized. With trembling hands, Emily opened the envelope and took out a 3-page letter. My dear Emily, if you are reading this, it means you have found my hiding place. It means you know the truth about our story. I don't know how you got here, whether it was fate or coincidence, but I am happy that it happened. My name is Elizabeth Harrison, and I am your biological mother. 13 years ago, when you were just a few months old, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I let other people decide what was best for you without fighting hard enough to keep you with me. I was 19 years old when you were born. Your father had disappeared as soon as he found out about the pregnancy, and my family constantly pressured me to give you up for adoption. I was working 2 jobs, trying to pay the bills and take care of you alone, when I started having serious health problems. The doctors said I needed urgent treatment, but I had no money for daycare or anyone to take care of you during my hospital stays. That's when a social worker introduced me to the Mitchell couple. They seemed like good people and said they would take care of you temporarily while I recovered, but temporary became permanent without me being able to do anything to stop it. When I got better and wanted you back, they had already started the adoption process. I had no money to hire a lawyer, no family to support me. I had nothing but my love for you. For years, I tried to find a way to reverse the situation. I studied law at night, graduated, got a better job. But when I finally had the means to fight for you legally, the lawyers told me it would be almost impossible. You were already established in another family. You had already built a life. So I decided to respect that life. But I never stopped loving you or thinking about you every day. This cabin belonged to my grandfather, your great-grandfather, who died when you were 2 years old. He always said that if one day you wanted to know your true story, I should leave clues for you to find. That's why I started keeping your memories here. Every letter I wrote to you but could never deliver. Every photograph of us from the first few months. Every moment of our life together that they can't erase because they don't know it exists. If you've come this far, I imagine you've already discovered that your parents never told the truth about your origin. Don't hate them for that, Emily. They truly love you, even if they made serious mistakes in the past. But you also deserve to know the whole truth about who you are and where you come from. If you want to meet me, I will be here every Saturday at noon. If you don't want to, I will understand. You have a family that loves you, a life built. I don't want to mess that up. I just want you to know that there is someone in the world who has loved you from the first moment and never stopped loving you. Your little blue teddy bear has a twin brother that has slept with me every night for 13 years. Your first smile happened on an April morning when you were 3 months old. Your first word was Mama. These and 1,000 other memories are kept in my heart, waiting for the day when I can share them with you. With all my love, Elizabeth Harrison, your mother who never stopped waiting for you. Emily finished reading the letter with tears falling onto the paper. She looked at the clock on her phone. 11:30 on Saturday morning. If Elizabeth really came every Saturday at noon, she would arrive in half an hour. Panic took over the girl. She wasn't prepared for this meeting. She had so many questions, so many confused emotions. Part of her wanted to run home and pretend she had never discovered anything. Another part wanted to stay and finally meet the woman who gave birth to her, who fought for her, who never stopped loving her. She decided to stay. Exactly at noon, Emily heard footsteps approaching the cabin. Her heart was beating so hard she was sure it could be heard from outside. The door opened slowly, and for the first time in 13 years, mother and daughter saw each other face to face. Elizabeth Harrison was a 32-year-old woman with blonde hair identical to Emily's, but tied in a simple bun. She wore a light blue dress and carried a small cloth bag. When she saw the girl sitting at the cabin table, her legs almost gave way. "Emily." Her voice came out as a whisper. "Hi," was all the girl could manage to say. Elizabeth stood in the doorway for a long moment as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then, slowly, she entered the cabin and closed the door behind her. "You've grown so much," Elizabeth said, tears already streaming down her face. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined. Are you really my mother?" "I am," Elizabeth confirmed, sitting in the chair across the table. "I'm your biological mother, and you're the most precious thing that ever happened in my life." Emily began to cry too. All the emotions she had suppressed during the week exploded at once. Anger, sadness, confusion, relief, love, all mixed into an emotional storm she couldn't control. "Why did you leave me with them?" was the first question she managed to ask between sobs. Elizabeth took a deep breath. as if preparing to relive the deepest pain of her life. "Because I thought it was best for you at that time. I was very sick, very young, very alone. I wanted you to have a chance to be happy while I healed, but I never meant for it to be forever, never. They said you signed the adoption papers." "I did sign," Elizabeth admitted, and Emily felt as if she had been slapped. "But not because I wanted to. I signed because I had no other choice. They filed a lawsuit against me claiming abandonment, neglect, that I wasn't fit to care for you. I had no money to defend myself, no lawyer, no one." Elizabeth took a folder of yellow documents from her bag. "But I kept everything. Every paper, every court notice, every letter I wrote to you, but could never deliver. I knew that one day you would need to know the truth." Emily looked at the documents. There were court notices, social worker reports, letters from doctors confirming Elizabeth was healthy and fit to care for her daughter, desperate attempts to reverse the adoption. It was evidence of a legal battle Elizabeth had fought alone and lost. "You tried to get me back," Emily said, "and it wasn't a question. I tried for years. I studied law, graduated, got a good job as a teacher. But when I finally had the means to fight for you legally, the lawyers told me it would be nearly impossible. You already had an established life, you already considered other people as your parents. But I never knew you existed. If I had known..." "If you had known what? Would you have chosen to leave the only family you knew to come live with a stranger? I didn't want to do that to you, Emily. I didn't want to be the person who destroyed your emotional stability." The girl fell silent for a moment, processing Elizabeth's words. There was a painful wisdom in what she was saying. A mother who loved her daughter so much that she was willing to stay away to avoid causing suffering. "But you suffered all these years," Emily observed. "I did suffer, yes. But I also found purpose in my pain. I became a teacher so I could help other children. I work with families in vulnerable situations, trying to prevent other mothers from going through what I went through. My pain had meaning." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, Emily looked around the cabin with new eyes. "This cabin? You've been coming here waiting for me for years?" "I've come here every Saturday for 5 years. Since you turned 8 and I decided that if fate wanted us to meet, I should leave that possibility open. But I never expected you to actually come." "How did you know I would find the letters and photographs?" Elizabeth smiled for the first time since she had arrived. "I didn't know, but I know my daughter better than you think. Even from afar, I always knew you were curious, intelligent, brave. If you made it to this cabin, I was sure you would investigate everything. Were you watching me?" "Sometimes, from a distance. I went to your school performances, your graduations. I always sat in the back where no one could see me. I watched you grow up. I watched you become the wonderful young woman you are today." Emily felt both invaded and protected at the same time. The idea that there had been someone watching and cheering for her without her knowing was disturbing, but also comforting. "Jennifer and David, do they know you still live in the area?" "I believe so. It was never a secret. I continue working in Asheville at a school just an hour from Greenville. They know I never left." "And they never tried to talk to you, to work things out?" Elizabeth laughed bitterly. "We've spoken a few times over the years, mainly through lawyers. They always made it clear that they considered me a threat to the stability of the family they built." Emily felt anger growing in her chest. How could Jennifer and David consider Elizabeth a threat? She was her biological mother. She had the right to be in her life. "They're wrong," she said firmly. "You're not a threat. You're my mother." Elizabeth reached her hand across the table and gently touched Emily's face. "No, my daughter. I am the woman who gave birth to you, who loved you in the first months of your life. But Jennifer is the one who raised you, who took care of you when you were sick, who comforted you when you cried. She is also your mother. How can I have 2 mothers? In the same way you can love 2 different people in different ways. Love isn't a limited resource, Emily. You can love me as your biological mother and continue loving Jennifer as your adoptive mother. They are different kinds of love, but both are true." Elizabeth's wisdom impressed Emily. Even after so many years of pain and separation, she showed no bitterness or resentment toward her adoptive parents. There was a serenity in her words that spoke of someone who had found peace with an impossible situation. "What happens now?" asked Emily. "Now you decide. You can go back home, continue your life as before, and pretend this meeting never happened. Or you can try to find a way to have both families in your life, or you can give me a chance to be your mother again." "What if I choose to give you a chance? How would we do this without destroying my current family?" Elizabeth stood up and went to the cabin window, looking out at the forest. "Honestly, I don't know. It would be complicated, painful for everyone involved. Jennifer and David would probably fight against it. You'd be torn between two worlds. It wouldn't be easy for anyone. But do you want to try?" Elizabeth turned to look directly into Emily's eyes. "I want to spend the rest of my life getting to know the amazing woman my daughter has become. I want to share with you the family stories you've never heard. I want to be present for the important moments in your life from now on, but only if you want that too." Emily felt as if she were at a crossroads that would define the rest of her life. On one side, there was the security and familiarity of the life she had always known. On the other, there was the possibility of learning about her roots, her true history, a part of herself that had been denied. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Of course. You don't need to decide anything now. I'll keep coming here every Saturday. If you want to talk again, I'll be here. If you don't come, I'll understand." Before leaving the cabin, Elizabeth handed Emily a small card with a phone number. "This is my cell phone. If you want to talk during the week, you can call me anytime." Emily put the card in her backpack, along with some of the letters she had read during her first visit. During the bus ride home, the girl's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. She had imagined 1,000 times what it would be like to meet her biological mother, but reality was much more complex than any fantasy. Elizabeth wasn't the desperate, unstable woman Emily had imagined based on the early letters. She was serene, intelligent, clearly having overcome past difficulties, but she also wasn't the perfect mother from her dreams who would come to solve all her identity problems. When she got home, Jennifer was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Emily watched her with new eyes again, but this time with more compassion. Jennifer had truly been a loving and dedicated mother. The fact that she had stolen Emily from Elizabeth didn't change the genuine love she had always shown. "How was studying at Sarah's house?" asked Jennifer, without looking up from the pot. "It was good. We studied for the history test." Emily realized how natural it had become to lie to her adoptive parents. Each lie was a small betrayal, but she still wasn't ready to face the conversation she knew was inevitable. During dinner, David commented about a movie he had watched on television about a family that discovered they had adopted a child whose biological parents wanted to regain custody. "What a complicated situation," he said, clearly probing for Emily's reactions. "What do you think should happen in a situation like that?" Emily felt as if it were a test, as if David suspected something. "I think all the people involved should talk and try to find a solution that would be best for the child," she answered carefully. Jennifer dropped her fork on the plate, making a noise that echoed through the silent kitchen. "But the child already has a family," she said quickly. "It wouldn't be fair to destroy an established family because of people who showed up later." "But what if those people didn't just show up later?" Emily heard herself asking. "What if they were always there but were prevented from being part of the child's life?" The silence that followed was charged with tension. David and Jennifer exchanged a look that Emily recognized as the silent communication of couples who had been together for a long time. "Emily," David said slowly, "is there something you want to tell us?" It was the perfect moment to confess everything, to lay all the cards on the table, literally, and force an honest conversation about her past. But Emily discovered she still wasn't ready. She needed more time to process everything she had discovered. "No, Dad. It was just curiosity about the movie, really." Another lie. The third lie, in one day. Emily was turning into a person she didn't recognize, but she didn't know how to stop. That night, she stayed up late, reading and rereading Elizabeth's letters that she had brought from the cabin. One in particular touched her deeply. "Emily, today, you turned 2. I spent the whole day imagining what your birthday party would be like. Jennifer probably made a beautiful cake and invited all the children in the neighborhood. I made a small cake here at home and sang happy birthday alone, hoping that somehow you could feel my love reaching you." The image of Elizabeth celebrating alone the birthday of the daughter she had lost broke Emily's heart. How many birthdays had Elizabeth spent like that? How many Christmases? How many important dates had she lived through in loneliness, loving a daughter who didn't even know of her existence? On Sunday morning, Emily woke up with a determination she hadn't felt since discovering the truth about her origin. She couldn't keep living a lie. Jennifer and David deserved to know that she had discovered everything, and she deserved honest answers about her past. During breakfast, she took a deep breath and gathered her courage. "Dad, Mom, I need to talk to you about something important." Jennifer immediately stopped spreading margarine on her bread, and Emily saw genuine fear in her eyes. "What is it, honey?" Emily took from her backpack one of the photographs she had found in the cabin. The photo of Elizabeth holding a baby, with Emily 8 months written on the back. The effect was immediate and devastating. Jennifer let out a choked scream and covered her mouth with her hands. David turned pale and sat down heavily in the chair. "Where did you get this?" David asked in a hoarse voice. "In the cabin, where I hid during the storm on the school trip. There was a box full of photographs, letters, and documents about my life before you. About Elizabeth Harrison, my biological mother." Jennifer began to cry uncontrollably. David ran his hands over his face several times, as if trying to wake up from a nightmare. "Emily, honey, you need to understand." "No, Dad. You're the ones who need to understand. I know everything. I know that Elizabeth didn't abandon me. I know she was sick and asked for temporary help. I know that you started an adoption process against her will. I know that she fought for years to get me back." "That's not how it was," Jennifer exploded through tears. "You don't understand what the situation was like. She was very young. She wasn't in a position. She got better. She graduated, got a job, was able to take care of me. But you didn't give me back because you already loved me as your own daughter." David stood up and began pacing back and forth in the kitchen. "Emily, we really love you. From the first day. When Elizabeth brought you to us, we said it would be temporary, but it was impossible not to get attached. You were so small, so sweet. Jennifer had been trying to get pregnant for 8 years. You were like a miracle in our lives. But it wasn't right for you to decide to keep me against my biological mother's will." "It wasn't against her will in the end," Jennifer said, trying to control her crying. "She signed the papers. She agreed. Because you forced her. Because you used the legal system against a young woman who didn't have the resources to defend herself." The silence that followed was heavy with guilt and truth. David finally stopped walking and looked directly at Emily. "You're right," he said simply. "You're absolutely right. We made a terrible mistake. A mistake that started with love, but turned into pure selfishness." David's honest confession took Emily by surprise. She expected more denials, more attempts to justify the unjustifiable. "Why did you never tell me the truth?" "Because we were afraid," Jennifer admitted. "Afraid that you would hate us. Afraid of losing you, like we lost the chance to have biological children. Afraid that Elizabeth would come back and take away the only family we managed to have." Emily felt a mix of anger and compassion. Anger for the lie that had lasted 13 years, but compassion for the genuine fear she saw in both their eyes. "Do you know where she is?" "We do," David confirmed. "She never left the area. She works at a school in Asheville. Sometimes we see her from afar at town events." "And you never tried to talk to her? To resolve things in a friendly way?" Jennifer and David exchanged a look loaded with years of private discussions about this subject. "We tried a few times," Jennifer admitted, "but it always ended in a fight. She never forgave us for what we did. And we were afraid that if you met, you would choose to stay with her. And if I did choose to?" The question hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Emily saw genuine panic in Jennifer's eyes, as if the mere possibility were an existential threat. You want to meet her?" Jennifer asked with a trembling voice. Emily took a deep breath before answering. I already have. If the previous silence had been heavy, this one was absolutely deafening. Jennifer seemed to stop breathing, and David leaned on the kitchen counter as if his legs could no longer support his weight. When? Was all David managed to ask. Yesterday. She goes to the cabin every Saturday at noon for 5 years, hoping that one day I would show up there. And what did she say? What does she want? Jennifer asked, and there was real desperation in her voice. She said she loves me, that she never stopped loving me, that she wants to be part of my life, but only if I want to. She said that you are also my family, that she doesn't want to destroy what was built here. Jennifer began to cry again, but this time it seemed to be from relief. She really said that? She did. She didn't show anger toward you. She showed sadness, but not anger. She understands that you genuinely love me. David sat back down at the table. Emily, what do you want to do about this situation? It was the question she had asked herself hundreds of times since meeting Elizabeth the day before. I want you to talk to her. I want you to stop treating her as a threat and start treating her as what she is, my biological mother, who deserves to have some kind of relationship with me. And if we talk and can't reach an agreement, asked Jennifer, then you'll have to accept that I'll have separate relationships with you and with her, because I won't choose one family and renounce the other. You've been my parents for 13 years, that won't change. But she is my biological mother, and that won't change either. The firmness in Emily's voice surprised even herself. It was as if she had finally found her voice, her ability to make decisions about her own life. You're right, David said after a long moment. You have every right to know your story, your biological family, and we were wrong to try to prevent that. Jennifer was still crying softly, but she nodded in agreement with her husband. What do you propose? She asked. I propose that you come with me next Saturday to the cabin. That they talk with Elizabeth face to face, like responsible adults, about how we can make this work for everyone. The idea clearly terrified Jennifer, but Emily saw that she was seriously considering it. Do you think she'll want to talk with us? I think she will want to, yes, for my sake. She made it very clear that my happiness is more important than any resentment she might have. David reached his hand across the table and touched Emily's hand. Sweetheart, no matter what happens, you need to know that we love you more than anything in the world. And if we made mistakes in the past, it was always with the intention of protecting you and protecting our family. Emily squeezed David's hand. I know, Dad, and I love you too, that will never change. But now I need space to love more people too. During the rest of the week, the atmosphere at home was one of nervous tension mixed with relief. The truth was finally on the table, and although it was painful, it was also liberating. Emily no longer needed to lie or hide her discoveries. Jennifer spent the days asking 1,000 questions about Elizabeth. How she was, if she looked happy, if she had gotten married, if she had other children. Emily answered what she knew, trying to be honest but also sensitive to her adoptive mother's feelings of insecurity. David was more focused on the practical aspects of the situation. What would the logistics be for Emily to have relationships with both families? Where did Elizabeth live? What was her job like? He seemed to be trying to assess whether Elizabeth would be a positive influence in their daughter's life. On Thursday evening, Emily called Elizabeth using the number she had given. Hello? Elizabeth, it's Emily. Emily. The relief in Elizabeth's voice was palpable. I was praying that you would call. How are you? I'm fine. Confused, but fine. I told Jennifer and David about our meeting. How did they react? At first it was difficult, lots of crying, lots of tension, but in the end they admitted they made mistakes and that they're willing to talk. Elizabeth was silent for a moment. They want to talk with me? Yes. I suggested that you meet on Saturday at the cabin to try to find a way to make this work for everyone. Emily, are you sure you want this? It could be very painful for you to watch this conversation. I'm sure. You need to resolve things from the past if you're going to share space in my life from now on. Elizabeth agreed to the meeting, but Emily detected nervousness in her voice. It was understandable. She would finally have to face to face the people who had changed the course of her life and her daughter's life. On Saturday morning, Emily woke up with a knot in her stomach. Jennifer had been up all night. Emily could hear her moving around in the kitchen since 5 in the morning. David was also visibly nervous, checking the time and the route to the Great Smoky Mountains several times. During breakfast, Jennifer could barely eat. What if she hates us? What if she tries to convince us to let you go live with her? Mum, Elizabeth is not a vengeful or manipulative person. She only wants what's best for me. How can you be so sure? You only talked to her once. Emily thought about her adoptive mother's question. It was true that she had only known Elizabeth for a week, but there was something about her demeanor, the wisdom in her words, the way she had handled years of separation, that inspired trust. Intuition, she simply replied. The trip to the Great Smoky Mountains was tense and silent. David drove with excessive care, as if he wanted to delay the moment of the meeting as much as possible. Jennifer looked out the window, clearly lost in thoughts about the past and worries about the future. Emily guided them along the trail to the cabin, pointing out landmarks she had memorized during her 2 previous visits. When the rustic structure appeared among the trees, she saw Jennifer catch her breath involuntarily. "This is it," Emily said unnecessarily. Elizabeth was already waiting, sitting in a chair outside the cabin. She wore a simple beige dress and had brought a thermos of tea. When she saw Emily approaching, accompanied by the Mitchell couple, she rose slowly. The first meeting between Elizabeth and Jennifer in 13 years was charged with raw emotion. Both women looked at each other for a long moment, seeing in one another the history of pain and love shared over the same child. "Hello, Elizabeth," Jennifer finally said, her voice trembling. "Hello, Jennifer." "David," Elizabeth replied with formal politeness. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us," said David. "Emily asked, and what she wants is always my priority." They sat in an informal circle beside the cabin, and Emily realized how surreal the situation was. 3 adults who had spent over a decade avoiding each other, finally forced to talk because of her. "Elizabeth," Jennifer began, clearly forcing herself to speak first, "I want to apologize." Elizabeth seemed surprised by the direct apology. "Why?" "For everything. For becoming so attached to Emily that I couldn't return her when you got better. For using the legal system against you. For depriving you of seeing your daughter grow up." Elizabeth was silent for a moment, processing words she clearly hadn't expected to hear. "And I apologize for creating a situation where you felt forced to choose between doing what was right and protecting the family you loved." Elizabeth's response disarmed David and Jennifer. They clearly expected anger, resentment, perhaps even legal threats. Instead, they found understanding and shared responsibility. "Elizabeth," David said, "we know we made terrible mistakes, and we know Emily has the right to know her biological mother and her history. What we want to know is, how can we make this work without destroying the stability she has with us? Do you really want an honest answer?" "We do." Elizabeth looked at Emily, who nodded encouragingly. "I believe Emily can have love and room for 2 families in her life. You raised her, educated her, gave her stability and love. That can't be erased or replaced. But she also has the right to know her roots, her extended family, the stories you can't tell because you didn't live them. And you don't have resentment toward us?" asked Jennifer. "Of course I do," Elizabeth replied with an honesty that took everyone by surprise. "I have resentment. I have anger. I have sadness for everything I lost. But I also have gratitude. Gratitude. Gratitude because you loved my daughter when I couldn't be present. Gratitude because she grew up in a stable family, had opportunities I might not have been able to give at the time. Gratitude because, despite everything, she became an incredible young woman." Emily felt tears in her eyes, hearing Elizabeth speak with such maturity about a situation that had caused so much suffering. "What do you propose?" asked David. "I propose we start slowly, that Emily can visit me a few times a month, get to know her biological family gradually. I propose you include me in some important events in her life, graduations, birthdays. I propose we stop seeing this as a competition and start seeing it as collaboration." "What if Emily decides she wants to live with you?" Jennifer asked in a small voice. Elizabeth looked directly into Jennifer's eyes. "Jennifer, Emily is 13 years old. In 5 years, she'll be an adult and will be able to choose where and with whom she wants to live. If during these 5 years you continue being the loving parents you've always been, I believe she'll want to keep you in her life forever. If you try to use fear or emotional blackmail to keep her, you'll lose her anyway." The wisdom of Elizabeth's words was undeniable. Emily saw that both David and Jennifer were processing the logic of what she had said. "Do you have other children?" asked Jennifer. "No, Emily is my only daughter. After I lost her, I never managed to have a serious relationship with anyone. I dedicated my life to work and the hope of one day being in her life again." The revelation deeply touched Jennifer. Emily saw genuine compassion in her adoptive mother's eyes as she realized the sacrifice Elizabeth had made. "Elizabeth," Emily said, "I want you all to know that I won't choose between you. You are my family, all of you. I want to meet my maternal grandmother. I want to hear stories about when you were little. I want to understand where my stubborn personality comes from." Elizabeth laughed for the first time that morning. "You definitely inherited that from me. And the curiosity too. But I also want to keep sleeping in my bed in my room with you," she said, looking at David and Jennifer. "I want to keep being Emily Mitchell, but I also want to be Emily Harrison when I'm with my biological family." David extended his hand to Elizabeth. "Elizabeth, we made terrible mistakes in the past. We can't fix that, but we can try to do better from now on. If you're willing to share Emily with us, we're willing to share her with you." Elizabeth looked at the extended hand for a moment before shaking it. "I accept," she said simply. Jennifer also extended her hand, but Elizabeth stood up and hugged her instead of shaking her hand. It was a hug filled with years of pain, but also with relief and hope. "Thank you for taking such good care of my daughter," Elizabeth whispered in Jennifer's ear. Jennifer began crying again, but this time they were tears of relief. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a mother," she replied. Emily watched the hug between her two mothers and felt as if a gigantic weight was being lifted from her shoulders. For the first time since discovering the truth about her origin, she felt she could have a complete and unified family, rather than families competing for her loyalty. They spent the rest of the morning in the cabin, talking about practical matters. Elizabeth showed David and Jennifer the documents she had kept all these years, the letters she had written, the photographs she had taken during Emily's first months of life. It was painful for Jennifer to see evidence of the love Elizabeth had always felt for her daughter, but it was also revealing. David was particularly moved when reading a letter Elizabeth had written when Emily turned 10. "Emily is turning 10 today. I spent the whole day imagining how her party is going. Jennifer probably made a beautiful cake and invited all her school friends. I hope she's happy. I hope she knows how much she's loved. Even from afar, even without knowing I exist, she's the most important thing in the world to me." "Elizabeth," David said after reading the letter, "we were very selfish. You deserve to be present in all those moments. The past is past, David. What matters now is the future." They agreed that Emily would visit Elizabeth once a week initially, gradually increasing as everyone felt more comfortable with the situation. Elizabeth would be included in important events, and Emily would gradually meet her extended biological family. They also decided that Emily would keep the Mitchell surname, but would add Harrison as a second surname. It would be Emily Mitchell Harrison, a symbol of the union of her two families. During the following weeks, the new family dynamic gradually settled in. The first visits of Emily to Elizabeth's house in Asheville were a bit uncomfortable, but little by little they became natural. Elizabeth lived in a small but cozy house with a garden full of flowers that she took care of herself. Emily discovered she had inherited from her biological mother the love for plants and cooking. Elizabeth was an excellent cook, specializing in traditional sweets she had learned from her own mother. It was through cooking that Emily met her maternal grandmother, Mrs. Margaret. The 70-year-old woman was moved to tears when Elizabeth arrived at her house, bringing the granddaughter she had never been allowed to meet. "Oh, my lord," said Mrs. Margaret, holding Emily's face in her hands, "you look just like your mother when she was your age. The same eyes, the same stubborn smile." Mrs. Margaret had kept all these years baby clothes she had made for Emily, but could never give. There were also family photographs, stories about Elizabeth as a child, family recipes she wanted to teach her granddaughter. Emily discovered she had 3 maternal uncles she had never met. Uncle Richard was a mechanic like David, Uncle Stephen was a teacher like Elizabeth, and Aunt Rebecca was a nurse. They all lived in the Asheville area and had all followed her story from afar over the years. "We always knew where you lived," admitted Uncle Richard. "Sometimes we would drive by your school just to see you from a distance. Elizabeth insisted on knowing if you were okay, if you were growing up healthy." The revelation that there was an entire family who had always known of her existence while she didn't know of theirs was initially disturbing for Emily, but gradually she understood that they had respected the legal decision and tried not to interfere in her established life. The first shared family event happened on Emily's 15th birthday. Jennifer had planned a big party at the Mitchell family home, inviting all her school friends and the Mitchell relatives. But when it was time to send the invitations, Emily asked to include Elizabeth and the Harrison family. At first, Jennifer was nervous about the idea. "Won't it be awkward? 2 families who don't know each other at an intimate party." "Mum, they need to meet at some point, and this is my party. I want all the people I love present." David supported his daughter's decision, and Jennifer ended up agreeing. She even called Elizabeth personally to coordinate the party details. The birthday day was emotionally intense, but also magical. Emily wore a dress that Jennifer had bought, but a necklace that Elizabeth had given as a gift. A delicate chain with a heart-shaped pendant that had belonged to Emily's great-grandmother. Mrs. Margaret immediately hit it off with David's mother, Mrs. Dorothy Mitchell. Both were 70-year-old ladies. Both had raised children with financial difficulties. Both loved to cook. They spent most of the party exchanging recipes and stories about grandchildren. Elizabeth and Jennifer, initially tense, ended up talking at length about Emily. Jennifer showed photos and videos of events that Elizabeth had missed, and Elizabeth shared memories of the first months that Jennifer hadn't experienced. "She was always stubborn," said Elizabeth, laughing at a story Jennifer told about Emily at 6 years old. "That she definitely inherited from you," replied Jennifer, and for the first time they laughed together. David and Emily's uncles discovered shared passions for soccer and fixing things. Uncle Richard and David spent an hour talking about cars, while Uncle Stephen and David discussed teaching strategies. David always helped Emily with her homework. At the end of the party, Emily felt truly complete for the first time in her life. All the people she loved were in the same place, getting along harmoniously, celebrating her. It was the kind of family she had always wanted but never knew was possible. During the toast, Emily gave a speech that touched everyone present. "I want to thank everyone here today. For a long time I thought family was something simple, father, mother, children. But I learned that family can be much more complex and much richer than that. Today I have 2 mothers who love me for different reasons but love me completely. I have a father who raised me with care, and uncles who always cheered me on from afar. I have 2 grandmothers who spoil me and teach me different things about life. I'm the luckiest girl in the world because instead of choosing one family, I got to have 2. There wasn't a dry eye in the room when she finished speaking. In the months that followed, Emily's extended family continued to grow stronger. Jennifer and Elizabeth developed a genuine friendship based on their shared love for the same girl, which evolved into mutual respect and real affection. David discovered he had much in common with Elizabeth's brothers, and they began meeting regularly to watch soccer games. Mrs. Margaret and Mrs. Dorothy became close friends, visiting each other often to cook together and exchange gossip about their grandchildren. Emily divided her time between the 2 families naturally. Some weekends she stayed with Elizabeth, learning Grandmother Margaret's recipes or helping Uncle Stephen with school projects. Other weekends she stayed home with David and Jennifer, maintaining the family traditions they had always had. Both houses became equally home to her. At the Mitchell's house, she had her room decorated with band posters and photos of friends. At Elizabeth's house, she had a special corner with books her biological mother had saved for her and photographs of the Harrison family. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. The first major crisis of the new family dynamic happened when Emily turned 16 and started dating. Jennifer became worried when she learned her daughter was seeing a boy from school, but before she could talk to her, she discovered Elizabeth had already had that conversation. "What do you mean you already talked to her about dating?" Jennifer asked Elizabeth during one of their weekly calls they had started making. "Jennifer, she told me she liked a boy. We talked about relationships, about protecting herself, about not doing anything she doesn't feel comfortable doing. But I'm her mother. I should have that conversation first. You're her mother just as much as I am. She talked to me because she felt comfortable. Next time she might talk to you first. Or we could all three talk together." Maternal jealousy was a constant challenge both women had to learn to navigate. Jennifer sometimes felt threatened when Emily showed excessive enthusiasm for the Harrison family traditions. Elizabeth sometimes felt excluded when Emily reported special moments she had experienced with the Mitchells. But they developed strategies to deal with these feelings. When one felt insecure, she would call the other to talk openly about it. When Emily showed preference for something from one family, the other made a conscious effort not to take it personally. Emily also had to learn to balance the different expectations and personalities of her two families. The Mitchells were more reserved and practical, while the Harrisons were more expressive and emotional. She learned to adapt to each family's style when she was with them. A striking example was when Emily decided she wanted to study veterinary medicine. David was concerned about the financial prospects of the profession, while Elizabeth was excited because Emily had inherited her love for animals from her. Uncle Stephen offered help with college entrance exams, and Jennifer offered logistical support during her studies. Instead of becoming sources of conflict, the different perspectives became complementary resources for Emily. She had David for practical advice, Elizabeth for emotional support, Jennifer for organization and planning, and her aunts and uncles for different types of expertise. When it was time for the college entrance exams, Emily applied to universities both near Greenville and near Asheville, so she could maintain easy access to both families. She placed third for veterinary medicine at North Carolina State University, which was located at a midpoint between the two cities. The acceptance celebration was organized jointly by both families at Mrs. Margaret's house, which had the largest backyard. David took care of the barbecue. Elizabeth made the desserts, Jennifer organized the decorations, and all the aunts and uncles contributed something. Emily graduated from high school as the class speaker, and in her speech, she talked about how family can take unconventional forms but still be deeply loving and functional. Many people in the audience didn't fully understand the reference, but Emily's two families knew exactly what she was talking about. During her first year of college, Emily lived in a student dormitory but spent alternating weekends with each family. She found that she missed both when she was away, but also that she had developed enough emotional independence to be happy on her own. It was during this period that she began working as a volunteer for an NGO that helped vulnerable families navigate the adoption and custody system. Her own experience had given her unique insights into the emotional complexities involved in these processes. Elizabeth was especially proud when she learned of her daughter's volunteer work. "You're turning our painful story into something that can help other people. That shows the kind of person you've become." David was also proud, but for different reasons. "You're using everything you've lived through to make a difference in the world. That shows we raised you well, all of us." David's use of the plural, all of us, symbolized how he had genuinely accepted Elizabeth as Emily's co-mother. There was no more competition, only collaboration. At 18, Emily had her first serious relationship with a college classmate named Brandon. Both Jennifer and Elizabeth were nervous about the prospect of sharing Emily with a boyfriend too, but she reassured them, "You're not going to lose me to anyone. You're my family. That will never change. Brandon is my boyfriend. It's different." Brandon was introduced to both families simultaneously during a Sunday lunch at the Mitchells' house. He was initially confused by the dynamic. Why did Emily have two mothers? But Emily explained her story naturally. "It's complicated to explain, but it's simple to understand when you're around it. I have a big, loving family, that's all." Brandon adapted quickly and even commented that he was envious of the support network Emily had. "You have so many people cheering for you, advising you. supporting you. It's incredible. When Emily turned 20, she threw a surprise party for Elizabeth and Jennifer. It wasn't either of their birthdays. It was simply a celebration of the two women who had made her life possible. "You both saved my life in different ways," Emily said in her speech. "Elizabeth, you gave me life and taught me that a mother's love knows no bounds. Jennifer, you gave me stability and taught me that family is about choice and commitment. You both taught me that it's possible to love more than one person at the same time without diminishing the intensity of love for either." In that moment, watching Elizabeth and Jennifer hugging and crying with emotion, Emily realized her story had found the perfect resolution. She hadn't lost anything by discovering the truth about her origins. She had gained an even larger and more loving family. At 22, when she graduated from veterinary school, Emily made sure both mothers accompanied her on stage during the graduation ceremony. The announcer declared, "Emily Mitchell Harrison, accompanied by her mothers, Elizabeth Harrison and Jennifer Mitchell." Some people in the audience looked confused, but Emily smiled radiantly. Her family had found its own definition, which worked perfectly for everyone involved. Today, at 25, Emily works as a veterinarian at a clinic in Asheville and lives in an apartment close to both Elizabeth's house and the Mitchells' home. She has lunch with one family on Sundays and the other on Saturdays. Both families gather together completely for birthdays, Christmas, and other special occasions. Elizabeth never married, but found personal fulfillment in her work as a teacher and in her relationship with Emily. Jennifer and David remain happily married and treat Elizabeth like a sister. Mrs. Margaret and Mrs. Dorothy Mitchell became best friends and spend most of their time together, planning surprises for Emily. The cabin in the woods where it all began was renovated by David and Emily's uncles and is now a regular family gathering spot. They have barbecues there in the summer and get together to tell stories during holidays. Emily still keeps all the letters Elizabeth wrote during the years of separation, now as a keepsake of a painful time that ended in joy. She reads them sometimes when she wants to remember how she got to where she is. The last entry in Elizabeth's diary, written on the day of her first meeting with Emily at the cabin, says, "Today my daughter found me. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that no matter what happens, she knows she is loved." And that's all a mother could want. Emily plans to keep this tradition of expanded love alive when she starts her own family. Brandon, who is now her fiancé, has already been adopted by both families and calls both Elizabeth and Jennifer mother-in-law. He jokes that he'll have to ask for Emily's hand from two mothers, but that just means he has twice the chance of approval. When she and Brandon have children, they will have 4 active grandparents in their lives: David, Jennifer, Elizabeth, and also Mrs. Margaret, who insists on being called great-grandmother. The children will grow up knowing that family can take many forms, all of them valid and loving. Emily's story has become a local legend, told as an example of how seemingly impossible situations can find creative resolutions when all parties prioritize the well-being of the children involved. Elizabeth is sometimes invited to give talks on shared custody and responsible adoption, always emphasizing that love is not a limited resource. David and Jennifer also participate in these talks, speaking about how they overcame the fear of losing their daughter and learned that sharing love means multiplying it. They publicly admit the mistakes they made in the past and encourage other adoptive parents to be transparent with children about their origins. Emily works as a volunteer in a project that helps adopted youth find their biological families when they wish to do so, offering emotional support and mediation between all involved parties. She uses her own experience to help others navigate the emotional complexities of these reunions. Her story demonstrates that there is no single right way to build a family, that true love always finds a way to express itself, and that sometimes the happiest endings are those that include all the people involved, rather than forcing painful choices between them. When Emily looks back at that 13-year-old girl who tripped on a loose floorboard and discovered a box of secrets, she feels gratitude for that storm that forced her to take shelter in a specific cabin on that specific day. It was the moment that changed her life for the better. Even though it initially seemed to be destroying everything she knew, the cabin still contains a buried box, but now it's filled with love letters from all the people who are part of Emily's extended family. It's a repository of happy memories instead of painful secrets, a symbol of how the past can be transformed into something beautiful when faced with courage and love. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this moving story. Where are you watching from? If you have any reflections to share with us about family, adoption, or reunions, leave them in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Emily made the right decisions? We'd love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one.